Thanks, Marisa and Rachel. So we're going to do the CASAS Recertification training. I'm Marty Olsen. Have been training here in Minnesota for close to 20 years, and then in Iowa a little bit before that. So I've been using CASAS for a lot of years. There will be a link to this PowerPoint in the participant folder, which will be sent out to you next week. So today we're going to take a look at CASAS and especially some of the new assessments, such as STEPS and math goals too. Some updates on that, actually, hot off the presses from a meeting yesterday. So that'll be, I'll be sharing that. We will talk a little bit about some of the tools that CASAS has provided for instructors as they're working with these tests and helping to prepare students to take the tests. And certainly by doing this, you meet your every 5 years recertification for test administration requirement, and you can let your data manager know that you have done that. So, who is eligible to administer these assessments? Certainly any staff who've gone through the CASAS implementation training. We did that yesterday, and we try to do those throughout the year. The full training is the best and required for people who are new to assessment or new to the program. Also, there are some online modules that you can complete to meet that requirement. And also this training today will also meet your requirement of keeping up to date. This is a slide that shows what it looks like if you go onto the CASAS website and do some of their online training. They have it very well organized. You'll see here in the red, these are the things that everybody probably should do. You can see they have double asterisks if they want at least one person in your agency to do that. A new training, new and newer trainings would be these proctor certification trainings. They have a lot of good information in them and are really great for people who are focused and responsible for proctoring the tests. We do include this in our implementation training. So if people did that, they will get that information. There's also information for educators as to how to use the results once the results are given to them. Something new on this page is a link to just more information about CASAS steps and CASAS goals too. So check this out. It's something that could be shared during a staff meeting so that everybody knows a little bit more about these tests that are fairly new to us. So why do we administer assessments? You can see here there's a lot of good reasons. Obviously, the first one is we want to get to know our students. We need to know who they are and what they're looking for. We need to know the best class placement for them. We need to provide the teacher with guidance so that they can provide the best information within the context of the class. Certainly, we need to post-test students, so a good pre-test will help us with that. And accountability is so important for our funders. One thing that we always want to remind you is that CASAS is a standardized test. So what that means in brief is that every student should have the same experience that when they take this test every time. So if you follow, you see there are links there for the steps for testing day, and there's a script to read as you administer the tests. Those are two that should be used. That's going to help you with making sure everything is standardized. And then you can help your students only with demographics but you don't look at the test beforehand. There are practice items that you can work through with the student, but no general questions out of the test. Certainly, any technology, cell phones and so forth, should not be made available to students as they're testing. And they shouldn't have breaks in the middle of sessions unless they have some accommodations, of course. And don't review any of the answers with your students following the test. As I mentioned, there is a proctor certification training, and there's one for both paper test and e-test proctors. And it just helps proctors understand their responsibilities, understand what they can do to maintain the security of the test. Looking at what's important. Students need to be comfortable and feel positive about the test as they're going through it. So there are just so many things that are important for you to, or for the proctor to do and to make the experience the best that they can. So these certifications are a great way to help your proctors learn more about their responsibilities. Every site that is offering tests should have a copy of the test administration manual. Even if you're doing e-tests, this is important because there's so much in these manuals. There's copies of the answer keys. There's scoring guidelines, so you can understand what that test or how that test score falls in the continuum of the tests. There are score conversion charts, which helps you look at how many answers the student got right and what that means as far as the score of the test. And there are next assigned test charts. These help the proctor to determine what's the next test that should be given. So those, and plus many more things you can see there, are found in the test administration manual. So those are it's a very important tool that all test proctors should have access to. Test score ranges, very important to just understand, and we'll just talk briefly. When we correct the test, we look at how many the student got right. So that's called the raw score. And then that transfers into a scale score. So the number right leads to the scale score, which is a converted number. And that's the number that is reported for our data. Some things to know. Obviously, if you look up here, there's part of this is in the blue below the accurate range. Those are scores that you can't use because there's no score there. There's the accurate range, which is where we really want all of our students to fall in that mid-range. And then there are some scores that are called conservative estimate scores. They are scores that you shouldn't use if it's a pretest. So what I always say is, if it's a pretest and you fall in this range, you should retest. If, on the other hand, it falls into that range on a post-test, then, and the pretest was in that accurate range, this does show growth. So you can report these scores. They will go into SID, no problem. And on a post-test, definitely you can go ahead and report them. Just knowing that you're probably on the next level, or next tests, you are going to have to go up to a higher level test. So let's take a look at these assessments. First, for English language learners, we have the STEPS series. This is specifically for English language learners. We have the reading test, which was approved for 7 years, as well as the listening test, also for 7 years. So these are the two new tests, and we've been using them at least since the 1st of July. So people are becoming more familiar with them. One thing I do want to remind you is that life and work is no longer approved. We can't use it for NRS reporting, and all copies of this test need to be destroyed, and that should be in a way that they're not usable. So shredded is good, or burned. So the STEPS test does have, it's an acronym, Student Test of English Progress and Success. STEPS is a lot easier to say. Both of the reading and the listening tests have 5 levels. So it's a test that has more, you can drill down a little bit closer to the student score because of having 5 levels. And of course, there are 2 forms for every level. The STEPS test was written as aligned to the English language proficiency standards, which align directly to the college and career readiness standards. The test is multiple choice, so there's no change in how you administer it. And there will be it's all multiple choice. So as I said, the STEPS test is only for English language learners, which means people for whom English is not their first language. It's only appropriate for ELLs who score under a 241. So it does score higher than the life and work test did. That's for reading. Listening also goes higher than the old listening test, up to 232. Once the student has reached that level, then they will actually get SID will give them a level completion. They'll be marked as completed ESL. And something to note is then that they do need a new pretest. That completed ESL is not an EFL, educational functioning level. It's good for up to 12 hours, you've got that, but after that, you really do need to give the next level test. So whether you're doing CASAS goals or TABE, whichever one you're using, you need to move ahead to that next test. So just to compare the old life and work, which we had for quite a while, to the reading steps, basically the difference here would be in the levels. Life and work had 4, and STEPS has 5 levels. It still follows all 6 NRS levels. And then the other part that is different is it's linked to the English language proficiency standards, which and also the CASAS competencies, which the old test also was. And certainly that the ELP standards links directly to the CCR standards. So that's what we've been talking in Minnesota for several years about the CCR standards. So if you've been doing that, you're right where you need to be. Listening is very similar, except as you note, the old life and work only had 3 levels. So it's exciting to have 5 levels for listening. Goes a little bit lower, a little bit higher than the old listening test did. And then also the English language proficiency standards tied to the college and career readiness standards will also be seen in the listening test. Just to show you a little bit about the timing for steps, you can see here, reading steps has either an appraisal or a locator, and the appraisal is 30 minutes. The locator is shorter. It's only found on e-tests, but it does lead directly into the first pretest for the student. What's interesting is if you note in the red here, for both the reading and the listening, that people are not taking the full allowed time. So don't let those times worry you, because people have been finishing the test in a lesser amount of time than is allowed. Here's the reading steps level breakdown. And what I like about this chart is it shows that NRS levels 1 through 6. It also shows the level names. Sometimes programs talk level numbers and sometimes level names. So both of them are sitting next to each other here so you can see where they fall. It also gives you the scale score ranges that would be with each of those levels. And it does give a grade level that helps to understand where that scale score falls. So many of our teachers come from K-12. So looking at that grade level helps, I think, helps teachers to understand more about what where their students fall in the continuum. And you'll see over to the right here that each level of the STEPS test covers 2 NRS levels. And so you can see the opportunity for scaffolding as the upper level of one level covers similar information as the lower level of the next. So it moves up nice, neat stair steps. And you can see the same thing for listening, except the numbers are slightly different and the grade levels are different. But again, we've got those 2 levels for each test. So if we look at the ABE tests, we'll take a look here remember, we're talking now about the ABE tests. We have, first of all, not new yet, we still have the reading goals test, which is available through and approved through June 30th of 2025. And the new goals 2 reading test has been submitted for approval. We'll let you know when we hear about the approval of that test and when it's approved by NRS and then by Minnesota. And when it will be available for use. Also, but the new test is the Math Goals 2. We had Math Goals. The Math Goals 2 was approved for 7 years, so that's what we're using now. And just a reminder again, those old Math Goals tests do need to be destroyed, shredded. Need to get rid of them. Okay, you know CASAS loves their acronyms. So GOALS stands for Greater Opportunities for Adult Learning Success. And this is a test for, first of all, for people who speak English as their first language or for English language learners who've earned that higher score of 241 in reading on STEPS. As far as the math test, it can be given to any learner, whether English as a first language or English as a second language, or third or fourth, because it's the only math goals, goals 2 is the only math test available through CASAS. Of course, TABE also has a math test. And then both of these series are aligned to the college and career readiness standards. The new goals test has 5 levels, as we talked about with the steps. Okay, goals 2 also has that. Talked about it being aligned and that it can be used with all learners, whether English as a first language or second language. Administration remains the same. It's still a multiple choice test. You can see here the main difference between the math goals and the math goals 2 is this level information. The old math goals only had 2 levels. Math goals 2 has 5. So that's, we can really drill down and learn more about our students and their needs. This shows some of the college and career readiness standards that are covered in the Math Goals 2 test. And this should look really familiar to any teacher who has been working with the math CCR standards. Here's two charts that just show the timing. If you look at the reading and the math, you'll see the reading, you've been used to that. You know that the length of that test. Math, pretty much the same as the reading, although you'll note A and B a little bit, or A is a little bit shorter, B is a little bit longer. And then that level E, the highest level test, does allow for an hour and a half to test. So it's a little bit longer, but not overwhelming. And here's the same or similar chart to what we saw with the STEPS test, where we have all of the information here across the top and the grade levels. And also each test level covers two NRS levels. You'll note it does go a little bit lower in level A, and then it expands up a little bit higher in level E. But in general, each level does cover two NRS levels. And reading, you'll see how that fifth level really helps, because you see this is only 4 levels, so that each level has to cover more information and test more information. So we're glad to look, or we're looking forward to that new goals to reading test. So just to let you know, be reminded, procedures for administering the tests remain the same. They're multiple choice tests. You have to pay attention to the timing because that might have changed, but so use your test administration manual. But otherwise, the procedures, general procedures, are the same. Test security remain the same. There are pre-configured testing sessions if you're doing e-testing, so work on making sure you're using those. And obviously, you'll need new test booklets for the paper tests. So, how are we going to prepare our students for these tests? Let's take a look at what we know. First of all, there are sample test items. There have been in the past, and there continue to be. We have here now just these 4 reading goals, math goals 2, steps reading, and steps listening. So these are not actual tests, but they are tests that can be used to help your students learn and understand how to take a multiple choice test. And it's important for students to feel more comfortable with the testing process. So that's what the sample test, one of the things the sample test items can be used for. Basically, reducing anxiety for our students. We've had a lot of questions about beginning literacy students, and that, what am I supposed to give them now that there's no Forms 27, 28? And what we'll tell you is to give the steps level A. That's the form 621, 622. Basically, 73% of the test questions on steps A are similar to the beginning literacy content that was found in forms 27 and 28. And more than 50% of the content basically looks at high frequency vocabulary, one of those biggest things that you're working on with those beginning literacy students. And the third thing here is, changed. It is, and you will see in your test administration manual, that the learners only need to get 4 answers correct in order to earn a scaled score. But this is the exciting thing that we just learned yesterday, and I'm sharing it with you now. It's not, CASAS hasn't officially announced it yet, but it will be coming out. There was a problem with those bottom 4 non-scores for people who just really had no reading skills. They weren't able to score anything on the test. Because we needed to place our students into a program, we needed to place our students, we needed to report some sort of scale. So in order to change or make that possible, This is what it looked like, has looked like on that level A. You see these bottom four, 0, 1, 2, 3. So not until they got 4 right did they get a score. These were all asterisks, non-scores. Well, that's a problem because you can't report an asterisk. So what to do? Okay, there you can see that. What we're getting rid of that information. And this is the new information. They have taken those asterisks away. And now they said for all those bottom four, 0 to 3, you can report a 160, which is the lowest score on this test. This will be, I think, answer to a lot of angst that people have had over this level A test. As I said, this information should be coming out soon from CASAS. There you go. And you should then make sure, not yet, but you will need to update your test administration manual with the information that's in red here, because that's what those scores are going to look like for the 0, 1, 2, and 3 correct. Okay, so let's take a look at what some of those questions do look like. Here is, just a lovely colored picture, a picture, and then they have to choose the correct word. So it's a high frequency vocabulary item, and easy to look at and to identify what it is. Certainly abbreviations are important. Our students will see them. So go ahead and you take a look here. You're gonna either it's an abbreviation, there's a little bit of just matching of letters there too. Of course, the number formatting is important. Again, it's just reading, but reading from words to the numbers. As we look at some of the other things, one of the questions is academic vocabulary. How do I do that, or how is that tested? And what I like about their vocabulary questions is that they always underline the vocabulary that's being focused on. So you'll see what the word provides means what? Well, it doesn't say what, it's just a line, but it's underlined here. So then as they read, they can choose the correct. So that's some vocabulary that they can, one way to look at it. Algebra can be tested at all levels too, as we're looking at the math test. And take a look here. This is, it's not for a beginning literacy learner, certainly, but some of our beginning or intermediate students for sure will be able to understand the words in this question, and with the additional graphic be able to answer this. So that's how perhaps you could assess some of your learners, English language learners, in the math. Okay, but then we can get to the higher level. This is NRS level 6. So the test does get more difficult for those upper level. There's a question about, is which slide, Charlene? The new one that I talked about? It is not, because I just put it in this morning. I will change the slide deck that's in the folder, because as I said, it's hot off the presses news. So I didn't have time yet to put it in the folder, but I will. Okay, CASAS provides many different things that help you to determine, or help you or the teachers to determine how your students are doing and what they should be teaching. So let's take a look at some of those things. There are content standard blueprints. So STEPS is aligned to the English language proficiency standards But if you look at this, the area of focus looks very similar to what you would be doing with college and career readiness standards. So in the blueprints, you'll see there's either a graphic, circle graph, that shows what is covered and the percentage. Also down below is a chart that will show you, high frequency vocabulary. Well, this one doesn't tell you too much what that is, but this says it's in photos and symbols. In text, it's words on forms and abbreviations and so forth. So these two charts together really give you a lot of information. So this is at level A. By the time you get to level E, you've added the first level A just had vocabulary and details, but now we're getting into main idea, inference, and point of view. So you can see how much information you can get from these charts. This one is more general, but if you go down below, you can see what we're studying. Academic vocabulary, words with multiple meanings, retelling key details, and so forth. I won't go through all that information, but I do want to point that out to you that there's a lot of information on these charts, and these can all be found on the CASAS website. The link is here. They also have content standard blueprints. So listening has that. And see here for listening, we've got dialogue. We've got half of its vocabulary, and then the dialogue and details. Specifically, how they assess those is shown in the chart below. And then we get more in-depth conversations by the time we get to level E. Okay.
We're at about 11:32.
Okay, thank you. As we move forward to the content standard blueprints for math goals 2, you can see here there's 4 different areas. And here's the specific: understanding place value and computing using 4 operations for number sense. All right, at level A. Level E, it looks very similar, but let's look at what number sense is. Solving multi-step problems using ratios and proportional relationships, understanding radicals and irrational numbers. So you can see how they're building. This is, of course, was not directly from A to E. There's some work in there between those two before you get to that. There's competency blueprints. The competencies are the essential life skills that have been have been used to build the CASAS tests since the start. So if we take a look here at what some of that might look like for level A, it's basic communication. It's looking at these areas: consumer economics, community resources, health, and employment. When we get, this is level D, okay, we've dropped off on that basic communication because hopefully we're beyond that and building into some of these other areas. And also they have added in government and law. You'll note that everybody should learn something about their civic responsibilities, whether they're going to become a citizen or not. So government and law is also assessed in these CASAS tests. There are TOPS Pro reports if you are doing e-testing, and I'll just briefly let you look at these. You can certainly look more closely. You'll see this individual skills profile has a lot of information, way more than I'm going to talk about right this minute. And it even has the high school equivalency predictor as to how a student might do based on how they tested on this particular CASAS test. There's competency reports so that a teacher could look at this and note how this particular student did on the competencies and what maybe they could incorporate. There's also a class performance summary, so that a student would or teacher would be able to look at that to determine the needs of the student and the class as a whole. This is just a little bit of information. A lot of this is, you can go back and look at this. But you can see here that this is the cost if you're going to do paper testing, what you might need to spend, depending upon how many tests you think you're going to use. And here is,
Marty,
yes.
I'm going to stop you real quick because there's kind of an important question here.
Uh-huh.
And let's see here. So Charlene asks, do most adult programs use CASAS goals too now to assess students? We are still using CASAS Math 1 at this time. Now that's expired, correct?
Right, CASAS goals without the 2
Mm-hmm.
has expired, and you should not be reporting those, because that no longer has NRS approval and no longer has Minnesota approval. So you should be using CASAS goals Math 2. Okay? And Ruth said they're using TABE, which is fine as well. The TABE is approved, 11 and 12 is approved through next summer, and 13 and 14 is currently approved by the NRS. Minnesota has not yet approved it because we haven't had a chance to see it. It's not available yet. Okay, we've not been reporting, but it used, okay. So Charlene says they're using it to help assess students. Technically, you should be getting rid of the CASAS goals test. It shouldn't be used even to determine where your students are. I guess that's kind of what you're doing, but really CASAS says get rid of them, shred them, don't use them for instructional purposes, which is a little bit what you're doing if you're just using them to assess students. So I would say probably change that practice soon. Okay. The enhanced package here is the one that the state purchased. Actually the difference, it's a little more expensive, but it also allows for more reports to be printed. There are still some basic reports, and especially for smaller programs, you probably would be just fine with this, because you probably look at individual students a little bit more. So the basic package might work for you, but the enhanced package is what the state has purchased. So when do e-tests expire? Never. Once you purchase an e-test, it's yours, and you can use this test for any of the test administration is flexible in that you can use it for reading, math, listening, STEPS tests, goals 2 tests, and whichever test you may be administering, you can use that test administration for, and it's yours to use. So you will be able to, if you purchase what you can afford, because they're not going to expire. And I can't tell you if we'll have free test administrations again next year, but we've had money in the grant the last few years to do that. So I think, the last thing to let you know is make sure you do advise your data manager that you attended this recertification training today. So you're good for the next 5 years. If you do need a certificate of attendance to verify it, something that you can show, just email me, martha.olsen@gmail.com, and I will send you a specific certificate that shows that you completed the training today, since you'll get CEUs for today, but if you need CEUs that show specifically that you attended this training, let me know and I will let you know, or I will send that CEU to you next week. Okay. Oh, I went so quickly. We've got 4 minutes left. If there are any further questions, please let me know. And I will update the PowerPoint. As I said, I just got that information this morning, so I thought I would update that information about the steps level A, because it's been probably one of the biggest questions that we've been asked with the new series. So question asked and CASAS responded. Any further questions? I see we've got some links put in the chat, but no questions.
Thank you so much, Marty. If, as people are thinking about if they have some more questions, just a reminder to everyone that agenda has the Zoom links for the upcoming sessions. We are going to be taking a lunch break after this session, and then the next session 3 workshops will start at 1 o'clock. So you can use that agenda with the links to get to your 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock sessions this afternoon.
Thank you. And thank you, Rachel and Marisa. Yep. I don't think we could do this without Atlas. So I do so appreciate all the work or assistance that Atlas has done to keep us on track.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it.